I always say, when it comes to authenticity, my only USP as a magician is that there's only one me.
We're making conversations about putting magic in your marketing count.
So there are thousands of magicians that could learn the exact same tricks that I do. The only point of difference is...
Welcome to Making Conversations Count. I'm Wendy Harris, your host, and every episode I bring you an expert in their field to help you with that particular topic. Are you missing the magic in your marketing? If you are, you're going to want to listen on as we're joined by Ben Hanlin, comedian, magician, TV presenter, and now marketing agency owner, as we dive into putting the magic back into your marketing. So, being a magician, being a TV host and presenter, MC, all of these different skills that you have, I'm most interested, I think, in Pull the Pin. Sort of a lockdown baby, I'm guessing.
How did a magician end up being a co-founder of a digital marketing agency? The way this happened, it was exactly in the lockdown, as you say. So me as a magician, I was completely scuppered during the pandemic. I had no audiences. All of my work cancelled overnight. And I had a lot of thinking time, which we all did. And we all started to go, I've been doing this thing like on a hamster's wheel for years. What else do I want to achieve? And everything I'd ever done in my life is all about me at the focus. So as a magician, performer, presenter on telly, you are the product, which is great. As you get older, you don't always want to build an entire business around you because you want more challenges. So I had that in the back of my head. Can I be part of a bigger thing? And then my best friend, Sam, is a digital marketer. And over the years, my world of making funny, entertaining content, engaging social media posts for entertainment, and his world of brands wanting to create content have gotten closer and closer together till me and him were having such similar conversations that I was working with brands from a creative point of view and he was working with brands from a performance point of view. And we went, hold on, well, why don't we create an agency where we care about the ROI and the spend and the data? Because ultimately you're going to spend money, better give a return. But at the core of everything we do, let's create engaging content, video content, storytelling content, and put our two worlds together, really. So that's where it came out of. And it's been 2.5 years and it's going well. I'm learning a lot. It's growing. It's really good.
Well, it's funny because when these collaborations come together, I'm on the start of a journey with a new collaborator here. And I summed it up that we had different words, but we were saying the same thing, which is a wonderful place to start off from. You've got sort of 3 or 4 different strap lines or phrases that you use in Pull the Pin. You know, you're educators, first and foremost. You need to be letting the audience know something, telling them something. Yep. Insight driven.
Yeah.
Do you know the one I loved most? Client obsessed. There are so many mistakes made when looking to connect with your audience that often the mistake is talking all about me, my product, my company, my brand, my this, my everything else. Instead of, here's what you get. Here's how it'll make you feel.
The reason we say we're client obsessed is the starting point of any conversation, especially if you go down the marketing route, is you have to understand who you're talking to and what their purpose is and what they're about and where they want to be. So we know where they want to be, then we create the strategy to help you get there. So what they care about, we have to care about. Where they want to be, we have to really think about it. So there's no other way of doing it really, other than really kind of getting under the skin of a client and trying to really pull back, ask them 1,000 questions, figure out what their client's pain points are, all that stuff. Once we figure that out, the rest should be relatively easy. We can apply whatever skills we need to on top of that.
Something that I say often, which is once you run out of questions, you've gotten to the murkiness through the waters, haven't you? But then it leads you to being able to actually focus on the conversation.
Yeah. And also there's weirdly in my other world, so this is where the two worlds cross over. So I do keynotes about engagement and connection. And
I saw you were at Google.
Was it Google? It's very good in Dublin. It's very good time. And one of the points, you always talk about how can anybody walk on stage and engage with an entire audience? I mean, I do a whole talk on this, but one of the key points, really, really simple, is you have to truly, in that moment, care about your audience.
Yeah.
It's as simple as, I have to.
Why you feel nervous, isn't it?
Yeah. But the moment you stop caring, or the moment you have an interaction with somebody where you don't care about them, even at a one-on-one level, you get disengagement and they switch off and they don't feel they connect with you. So as busy and as confident and as successful as you are, you can never lose sight that you have to always care about every single audience, as big or as small as it is. Which again, let's look at the client obsessed mantra. It's exactly the same. It's the same starting point that before we walk into a client meeting, we have to want to care about them. It's quite simple, really, in that sense.
Yeah. I mean, I'm historically a telemarketer, which means marketing by phone. So you're qualifying in or qualifying out. Phrases like cold calling, which is pretty horrible, come to people's mind. And you go, no. And I think, people say about the fear of rejection and all of this sort of business, but ultimately it's not until you start to have a conversation and you hear tone of voice and you start to feel a culture or a persona, they might match your ideal client on paper, but then not be a good fit for who you want to work with, the sort of style or workplace.
Funny enough, my background was in sales back in the day, in recruitment. And I always found the best sales, because everyone thinks that sales is about who's got the loudest mouth that can charm you into buying anything. But actually, the best salespeople, they're just the best listeners, right? And they basically just go, do you have a problem? What are your problems? And do I genuinely think I have a solution for your problem? And if I do, great. And if we don't, best of luck. It's like, that's all it has to be.
So with pull the pin and all those other things, because things change, and I hear this all the time, sales is changing. Often that's just, some kind of software that's come out that's going to make your life easier and, and it's complicated and it can take you backwards. For me, I prefer the sort of social selling, the storytelling that people can hear and get. Overused word, authenticity, that you're genuine about what it is that you're doing. I have a simple strategy. I live on LinkedIn. I share everything else everywhere else, but everything starts with LinkedIn. That's my strategy. When it comes to sharing stories, there's lots of different pillar content and this sort of thing. And I know from the demographics of listeners that we're like the Brexit vote. We're over 50s and founders or, leaders in our business, or we're that sort of young 30, don't have any kind of fear about what they're doing. I mean, it's two completely different geographics of age, but what would your recommendation be for storytelling now with the digital landscape that we have?
Let's look at some trends that we know for a fact on LinkedIn, right? So first of all of this changes, and it just so happens to be right here, right now. We're talking about LinkedIn. We're talking about personal branding. In 3 or 4 years' time, it might be gone somewhere else. But right now, for B2B, especially, if you want to grow, get engagement and nurture your community and reach a new community, pound for pound, that's probably the best way to spend your time, as you're saying, right? So massive tick. Something that everyone needs to understand is for years and years and years, it was all about the brands. So if you work for a company, it's all about the company page. Now, the way we all think these days is on LinkedIn, I don't want to hear from the company. I want to hear from the experts behind the company. That's what interests me. So I'm not going to follow Google. I'm going to follow the leaders of Google because I'm interested to hear their thoughts there. So that's why personal brand is rising and rising and rising, because we've seen it. We post the exact same post, one on a company page, one on a personal page, and the personal stuff gets way more engagement. So as a brand, as a company, if you've got 10 leaders, that's 10 times you could be posting and sharing your message to 10 communities. So that's essentially the landscape. So to your question, right? How do you approach it? What's the effective way of doing it? again, I'll give you the real basic thing. Exactly what you've just said is have your content pillars. So in a nutshell, you should be posting consistently 3 times a week is the goal. How do you do that in a way that's not going to completely blow your brains out and tear your hair out, and because you've got a job to do? So there are a few ways you can do it. And this is not me selling my services. One way you can do it is you outsource the entire thing and just go, I am just not going to do it. It's not for me. I need to find somebody else or an agency that can take my rough ideas and do that for me.
You have a point there though as well, Ben, is that some people are not capable of actually creating the content either.
Yeah, it's really simple. I speak to a partner at a law firm that's on over £1 million a year. Does he want to be sitting there a few hours a week trying to scratch his head, trying to figure out what? No, just give it to somebody else so that they can, you do your job well, let somebody else do their job. If you're not interested in it, don't even bother.
Yeah.
But if you're not going to post, understand you are missing an opportunity. So you've got to be present one way or another if you want to grow via LinkedIn. Second of all, though, so let's assume you do want to post. Really simply, like you said, you've got your content pillars. The stress is the cheapest way of doing it. The way that content creators, people like me, churn out so much content is we batch everything. So what I do really simply is I come up with my 3 or 4 content pillars and I'll break these down. And this is pretty much that everybody could use. So first of all, please, if you take one thing from this conversation, stop selling and start giving on social media.
Yeah.
So there is a massive guy called Gary Vaynerchuk, who's Gary V. Do you know Gary V, Wendy?
Oh, yes. Our paths have crossed.
So anybody who's in marketing or social have heard of Gary V. And he's been saying it for 15 years and it's still true. When you're thinking about making a piece of content, just ask yourself, who are my audience and what value can I give to them? And then write down as many things that you think your audience will like and take value from. Don't try and sell them. Don't try and promote. Just try and give your information away for free.
Yeah.
That will build a connection. The way to do that is really simple. I always say, what are the 10 questions that every customer, when you sit in a meeting, asks you? Or when you're about to sit down and qualify a customer, what are the first 10 questions that you get asked? Should I even be on social media? Should I be doing this? Should I be doing whatever those questions are in your industry? Write those questions down. And there, all of a sudden, just answer those 10 questions on 10 different posts. There's 10 ideas. The next phase down from that is again, reiterate, who are you talking to? So who is my client? What are their current problems? And answer their problems. So after you've asked your first 10 questions, go, what other problems does my solution solve for my clients? And then just answer those. So this strategy is very much helping, giving. That's what I would say. We can get into how you craft story after that. But in essence, if you go with that approach, and then every now and again, like one every 10 posts, one every 8 posts, drop in a little thing that promotes yourself so that people go, oh, that's what that person does.
I run a LinkedIn local, and it's a great way for me to connect really quickly in one place with people that I know online. So it's bringing my online connections into the real world. And they ask all sorts of questions about content. They've heard some advice about, got to post 4 times a day. I'm just like, if you manage to get a post out a week, I'd be really proud of you. Because if you're running a business sub 5 people or just on your own, getting 1 post out a week is enough of a challenge, because you've still got to, hopefully there'll be enough interest in what it is that you've talked about for somebody to comment. You need to be able to engage back. So I think people get hung up on this L of activity and virility and put less effort into what it is that they've got to say, the headline hook, adding personality and being themselves.
So the word authenticity is super key on social media. And the reason being is what people who have got half a brain tend to do. And they look at LinkedIn and they analyze it. They go, oh, there are certain types of posts that are doing really well. I will copy that and be that kind of post. And you end up then starting to do posts that you don't really believe in, or it's not really you, but you know it's going to get the likes. The moment you go down that route, there's no consistency. You're not building a long-term, authentic brand, essentially. And the only thing that's going to keep you consistent in the long term is that it's always you. It's always my views. It's always my opinions. So actually, whatever comes and goes, I'm the consistent thing.
Well, otherwise, isn't it always just the keys in the pint glass?
I always say, when it comes to authenticity, my only USP as a magician is that there's only one me. That's it. So there are thousands of magicians that could learn the exact same tricks that I do. They could see my act and replicate it. But so many comedians. The only point of difference is my viewpoints, my lived experience. All of the experiences I've had mashing together equals me. No one else has that. So I have to lean into that as much as I can.
It's interesting because we've just I think a couple of episodes ago talked specifically about USP and boiled it down to just the uniqueness, which is you. Find out what you stand out from the crowd for.
The main thing, if you're listening to this, thinking about how do I take my authenticity and apply it to social media? Really simple. Whatever's trending, ask yourself, well, what is my opinion on this? How do I feel about this?
Yeah.
Or if there's anything going on in the wider world. So if there's anything going on in the wider world, look at it and go, oh, can I relate that very global thing to my industry and link it back to something relatable to what I'm doing? So for example, the best performing post I've had this year, I unpicked the Arctic Monkeys set at Glastonbury because I felt that they lost their audience engagement and connection. So I took a real trending, massive thing that was Glastonbury and I related it back to what I'm doing, which is engagement and connection.
And my opinion of that is with a 15-year-old who's into the Arctic Monkeys I didn't know half of the set.
I deliberately was slightly provocative because I knew people would pick up on it, but it's how I felt at the time. I was watching it and I thought, do you know what? This is how I'm feeling. I'm not going to regret saying this because I genuinely believe it. And I think it relates to everything I'm doing at work.
And it's that comparisonitis that can really paralyze us, isn't there? Because if you were to compare Arctic Monkeys to, for example, Elton John's set, where we went on, a masterclass with Elton, didn't we? The whole time. There wasn't a moment dropped.
Every moment that Elton John was on that stage, he looked like he wanted to be there and he was loving every minute. And he wanted everybody to have the best time ever. That was his starting point. Whereas the Arctic Monkeys look like we're doing this for ourselves and we're going to play the set that we're going to enjoy. Two different starting points, two different outcomes.
Yeah. And we know which one got positive and the negative from that.
One thing that we can all do, and I say this a lot, is start batching your content. So as you said, how do we get all this content in the bag each week, each month? I break it down into two processes. Step one, I block a chunk of time in my diary to batch just ideas. I literally write all those questions I said before, and I just write ideas of what I think posts could be. And I leave that there, and that becomes the next 20 ideas. And I pat myself on the back that I'm happy with that. In that session, I don't try and create any content and turn them into posts. I don't try and turn them into videos. I don't try and do anything with them because mentally, I'm quite tired and I'm done by that point. Too many times people try and come up with an idea and execute the idea at the same time.
Yeah.
So what I do is I then return and put another date in my diary a week later, a few days later, just to execute previous ideas. And then I'll have one session that is ideas and one session that is then turning those ideas into the posts themselves. And it also gives me 3 or 4 days of space to reflect. And sometimes 4 days later, I actually don't like that idea as much as I liked it 4 days ago. That's the advice I would always say is just have an idea session, then have an
execution. Session. Yeah. You've led me to an interesting question that I had set up my sleeve for you, which I'm sure will resonate with the listeners as well, is you mentioned a best performing post and you've talked about how you have your ideas and then you execute them. Are your favorite posts the ones that perform the best?
No.
Funny that, isn't it?
The thing that happens the most, just to flip that question, is posts that I really think are going to be brilliant, do really well, get zero engagement. So there are posts where I'll literally go, I love this. This is brilliant. And it's quite similar to the Arctic Monkeys post, or it's something like, and I go, this is brilliant. I sit there waiting for the comments and I'm like really sad, and it flops and it completely dies. And you go, oh, there's big learnings in that. And the first learning is, if you're posting content only to get engagement, you're playing the wrong game. Because if you put a post out that you don't even like and it flops, well, it's just annoying. But if I put a post out that I'm proud of and I believe in and I enjoy it, then that should be enough. That's the end result. Yeah. If it gets engagement, that's a bonus. Yeah. You have to think. So there is that. And the second thing is, what I've also learned is, I have no idea which post is going to be the best post in the month, even as long as much attention that I put on stuff. What I have to do is consistently post 3 or 4 times a week, and one of them in the long run will be good. So if I assume 1 in 10 posts is going to get more engagement, I don't know which 10, but the quicker I can put out those 10, the more often I'm getting the engagement.
And it's like building a snowman, isn't it? You have to start with a small snowball to build up to something so that you can look back and test, that you've done the testing and the measuring to see what the audience likes as opposed to what you like to give them. We will, of course, let everybody know how to find you and to reach out to you, etc., to carry on the conversation. But I'm interested to know that one conversation that changed your life or career. If you'd have not had that conversation, nothing would have changed. That opportunity would not have arisen.
There are a few opportunities, especially in what I do. There are some opportunities that literally change your career. Me getting my first TV show, the phone call to say, you are going to have your own TV show and it's going to air in the autumn and it's going to be on for 6 weeks and it's backed by ITV. If that wouldn't have happened, that takes me down a whole different route. I did have a conversation with an amazing man a year or so ago, who was like a life coach. And we sat for 3 hours and he let me talk at him and he gave me his thoughts and he condensed a few things down quite simply. He basically said, okay, so you're quite successful, on paper, things tick boxes. He said, but unless you find real purpose in what you're doing, no money, no day-to-day job is going to fill that hole. Yeah. So the next quest now in your 30s, after or late 30s, going into your 40s is, your expertise, what you're good at, your skills. Now you need to really double down. Everything you do, is it giving me purpose? And if that purpose is only monetary, you're on a highway to nowhere there.
Very sage advice.
Obviously, it's easy to say once people say that's easy to say when you're not starting out, people who are broke, they're all about the money. But if that's your only reason to get up in the morning, it's a little bit of an empty chest at the end of it.
Yeah. Well, let's hope that everybody finds their own piece of treasure in whatever it is that they're doing. Ben, thank you so much for your time today. I really have been delighted to have you on the show. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Cheers.
Something we are all really good at, and that is judgment of things, people, places, experiences. And I thought it was really interesting how Ben took an example of the Arctic Monkeys at Glastonbury versus Elton John. What did you think about that? It really does go to show that you can miss the mark and lose the magic, even though Arctic Monkeys are a really big, well-known global band. Their new music hasn't really hit the spot and audiences weren't ready for that kind of set at Glastonbury. Yet interestingly, the magic is always around Elton and you just know every single song. And one song can blur into the next, which is just simply Elton. That's the magic, isn't it, in your marketing? Being client obsessed, as Ben describes, being audience obsessed. And what stops us from doing that is often that anxiety or fear of rejection. So if you found this really interesting, I would urge you also to go back and listen to a few other episodes. Talk the same language but use different words, because every guest has a unique take on this. Please do look up Marcus Sheridan and his infamous They Ask You Answer. Bryn Tillman also talks about LinkedIn. Niraj Kapoor, everybody is in sales. And Al Tepper, a great guy who really just wants you to look at the uniqueness of you in your marketing. And me, goodness, I would love to hear from you if you need help making your conversations count. Until next time, we're going to be talking to Mike Southern, the beer mat entrepreneur. Can you really have a business idea and write it down on the back of a beer mat? Oh yes, and Mike's going to tell us all about that.